Check 1 2 1 2. Shout out. Ah! How's everybody doing out there? Hope you're enjoying this beautiful winter day. Getting our 8 hours of sun if we're lucky. And we got it today. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. A little bit of sun shining. It's almost gone down for the day, but it's still shining. So I hope wherever you are, you're getting a little bit of that too. A little bit of your vitamin D. Keep yourself topped up on vitamin D these days. We all know we're in the midst of a dark winter. So, gotta do our best to keep ourselves vitamined up. I'm also protecting the face, you know, from those harmful UVs. Ah! Actually, I'm trying to start a new trend. I'm looking to get more people into that, you know, half man, half robot look. That's going to be so cool. The new cheek, the futuristic. Well, more like there's other people out here quite a bit today walking. It's easier for me to avoid eye contact and maintain my anti-socialism if I've got big sunglasses on, right? If I can hide my face. I don't know about you guys, but I don't even really like seeing people anymore. I've become antisocial. If I could ever have been, I think I am now. So I'm probably not alone. I think after 2 years of this psychological abuse, a lot of us have crawled into our shells, tried to avoid other people in the world. Just gets to be too hard nowadays. Wherever you go, all those people that want to pick a fight, call you out, tell you how unworthy you are. So best to avoid them, sad as that is. That's kind of been my strategy lately. I actually ran into an old friend and he noticed me, unfortunately. And so he was like, "Hey, I like your hat." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't think you really like my hat." And I was like, "Oh, what are you buying there? A bottle of water?" "Yeah, man, you're pretty observant." And he's like, "So, what have you been up to?" And I was like, "Oh, man, here we're standing, 18 feet apart." I was like, "Oh, not much, just trying to stay safe, And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "I usually go out like this, and I put this on like that, eh?" And I said, "Then no one recognizes me and I don't have to talk to anybody." And I actually kept it on like this the rest of the exchange and even past the cashier. And so he kind of felt a little bit awkward, but he kept asking me, "So you still going to the pool?" I said, "No, man, I'm not going to the pool anymore." "Oh, that's too bad. Why not?" I was like, "Man, I'm just not into it. I'm not going out. I don't want to be out seeing people. I'm sorry, but I'm being honest. I'm actually mad that you're talking to me right now." And he was like, "Oh." And so I had to apologize, but I seriously was like, "Leave me alone. Just leave me alone, man. I don't even want to have to," because I knew it would be possible, and it probably was with this guy, that within the next 2 minutes or so, if I kept the conversation going, it would be revolving around these shots, right? "Oh, you got your shots?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, why every day? Can't you people just leave us alone?" You people. I don't mean it like that. But gee whiz, man. As much as I'd like to have all of my conversation be about the Lord and heavenly things and looking forward to a bright day to come, I can't help but get caught up in it, It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what you do. And the more time I spend, especially on the internet, which is not as good as it used to be, for sure not. That's the name of the game, is all things COVID. So we've been thoroughly washed. Although I'm surprised because I still can find some alternative sites. And if you look, I don't know if you guys know or not, the few who even listen to this, but there's more than just like Google and YouTube and Facebook. And there's sites that are out there, and a lot of them actually kind of sprung to life a few years ago when the American president at the time, who was muchly hated by a lot of people who were in power and control, was censored. And so he was over the top using his little tweets and Twitter to the point where they legitimately censored him. They kicked him off, I think, forever. And they banned him, and they stopped letting his people who followed him hear his message. And so a few people out in that tech community decided it was time to set up some other alternative sites where you're still allowed to use free speech and say your point of view without people censoring it or banning it. And so I was in no way following this left-right in the sense that I had anyone I was supporting in that puppet show, but I did take notice of the fact that all of a sudden there was a lot of censorship going on, and I thought that was so odd, being as a lot of these people that were cheering it on were supposedly, liberals or people that, like supported freedoms. So it worried me, and I made the extra effort to find where I could, where you could go on and have platforms that were still free from that. And there isn't really any that are free from it completely, but there's a few now that still exist to this day, and I think they're like crowdsourced or funded, so they're still surviving with a lot of pressure, but they're able to still post people's videos and opinions and point of view without censorship. And that's supposed to be what a free country is that you have those places. Like, it should be everywhere. But if you're in a creeping totalitarianism, tyranny, then you'll see these things are the first to go. And yeah, that's what's happening. So there is places, like I go to BitChute as one that's, I think, pretty good. There's totally a lot of trash in there, and it's hard to find actual channels or like platforms on that platform, or like people on that platform that I actually agree with or like bother listening to. But there's a few, and so I've found that there's still a space, at least, where you can find out some things that you're not seeing on your mainstream news, because most people I talk to now, they're consumed with mainstream news, and they have a really like angry reaction if you bring up anything that's not with that narrative. So it's best to not even have a discussion with them if you want to like try and enlighten them with like some new news they might not know about that's actually happening. Like something here in BC, a lot of people probably don't know about, but it's happening in Vancouver, is there's a prominent doctor who's in his 80s, so he's not afraid to die, and he's honest, and he cares about people. He, with a few other key like intellectual types, have actually filed criminal charges against Dr. Bonnie Henry, and they want to get her investigated, as well as a number of people in our BC government investigated by like the RCMP, their investigators, to see if there's any conflict of interest. So if they're collecting money from any of these like pharmaceutical companies, or they're getting paid off somehow by some entity somewhere, if it shows, and they want to have, like the forensics of their financials, like an audit, to see if possibly these people are compromised, like conflict of interest. And so it's really refreshing. But they're doing this because it was like last month, this hospital had 13 stillbirths, so expecting mothers who were gave birth to a dead child, 13 in 24 hours. And so it's outrageous. And it took these doulas, the ones that like go and do like in-home or at-home births. I don't know much about it, but doulas, I do know some people I know that have used doulas or know doulas. And so anyway, the doulas were the ones that spoke up, not the hospitals, not the nurses, not the people in the hospital, but the doulas spoke up and said, we would usually see one stillbirth a month. There was 13 in 24 hours. And of course, these shots were a big part of that, like 100% of that. So it caused enough outrage with people that care about human life and right and wrong that they actually went to the RCMP office in North Shore and basically forced them to take their complaints and file criminal charges. And so there's a prominent doctor who's like at the head of it, so he gives them legitimacy, and they were out there, and that's like ongoing now. That's happening. So there's some pressure on these people that are in these spots that tell us each day and every day, 2 times, 3 times a day, what the new rules are and what the new restrictions are, and how many people have cases of this and how many people have died, and all that. It's been going on for 2 years. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like mind-numbing nausea that someone could still be listening to that. But they are. I mean, there's no one talking about people dying from overdose. Fentanyl is killing people in our province probably 3 to 1 compared to this DVOC or whatever you want to call it. So that would be something I think we should still be ringing alarm bells about, is all these illegal drugs that are spiked and they're killing young people and anyone, vulnerable people. And obviously suicide. Suicide's huge, but it's so buried, it's so shameful that you don't hear much about all these youth that are probably so depressed and so beat down. I mean, they've never even got a chance to have some freedom. And from the start now, they've been like, imagine being a first-year university student and you get basically put in jail in your little dorm and you can't have visitors and you're basically secluded from everybody for like the 4-month semester, and all your courses are online where you're supposed to, like, on your own, at your own pace, read lectures and watch YouTube videos, and you're paying money for that. Like, unreal. And how would you not become depressed, especially this time of year? And as a person who's away from their family or their friends or their like social network, to be stuck in a room where you're not allowed to like go out, and if you do, you have to cover yourself and avoid people. It's sick. It's sick. And for young people who are weaker, that's leading them right to suicide. And I think it's such a shame. But we're ignoring that because the headline of the day, and has been now for the last 2 years, is this one and only, right? So I don't know when people are actually going to see through. And I think a lot just won't. It's sad, but it's what's happening. So anyway, I'm trying not to dwell on that as much as I did have some points to make. I have a card here, and it's not one of the new age ones that everyone's showing, but I got a card here. I got one of those, and that's from years ago when, I too had been told and had to make the choice, and I did. In order to travel to certain countries, I had to take certain shots, vaccines they call them, and I agreed to it, and I believed they were actually like for my benefit, and that I would be protected from dengue fever or yellow fever. And in all honesty, I wasn't afraid of those things, and the chances were so remote. Like, I'd have to be in some like jungle in the Amazon to even have a chance. But they said you had to as a requirement. And I remember going in South America, they didn't check that. They weren't checking that when I'd get there. But on our side, they were saying before you could even go, you had to get these shots. So I participated at that time, and I was a younger person, and it was a different time. It wasn't like what it is now with regard to these same things. But it was a time when, I agreed to take these things, and I remember taking them, and I don't recall having any adverse reactions or any long-term effects. And so I'm not anti, if anyone wants to label me that, I'm not. And like my own parents, my mother's told me I've had like 12 from the time I was a kid. So they shot me up with a whole bunch of things. So at that time I didn't have a choice. That was my mom's choice. But the doctors had convinced them that they had to do this for the benefit of their baby's health. So they did a good job early on in my life of getting me on board. And I guess it's just because the science has changed so much with regards to these new age things, and the idea that they're able to like put them through without proper trials and have people basically be experimented on and find out when it happens what the effects might be. And it's too late for some people, right? And they don't know how long some of these negative effects are going to last or if they'll ever get better. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of people, especially athletes, having a lot of problems with their hearts. And I think part of it's because there's some junk in those things that's actually causing like cardiovascular stress and like harm, like either blood clots, strokes, heart attacks. This is happening to people. So, I would say, whoa, we need to stop these and get more data on the ones that we've already given it to and see long term how bad this really is for a lot of these people before we continue. But they're full steam ahead. It's like they don't care. They're leaving these people behind. So that's, to me, just such a red flag right there. It's like, nah, man, I don't trust you guys. You're not going to help me if you hurt me. And you're not even proving that these things work. Like I never got dengue fever or yellow fever or whatever these things were at the time they were telling me to be afraid of. But I'm seeing people who've got these shots still get their COVID. So what the heck? Some still dying. Like they're a new variant. And so now this new one that just came out, telling people now that it's the ones that didn't take it that are spreading it, and somehow getting the ones that did take it sick and infected. However that works. It's just so many lies. It's so many lies. So it's hard for me to trust any of that. So I'm not even on the fence. Like, I'm just like, no, you guys can go ahead. I'll wait and stay over on this side. Wait, maybe this dust will settle in a few more years. I don't know. But in the meantime, if they keep ramping up restrictions and punishments, I'm more than likely going to be getting sent to a camp or sent to prison or whatever their plan is. So if that's the case, then I truly believe it's truly spiritual. This is from the devil, and that, you know, my gut's been right, and my coming to Jesus has been heaven sent, that I've been saved, and I'm not gonna participate. And that's hard for someone who isn't at all spiritual to believe or think, and they just want to like write you off as crazy or think you've been deceived yourself. But, you know, if you read the Bible, then it isn't too far-fetched. In fact, it seems like it's very much predicted. So the more this goes on the way it is, the more I believe it's that time. And this is like a battle for our souls. And I know I have people out there, family and friends, that they've already made their decisions and they've decided to go with science and take the shots. And I'm not condemning them. I'm not judging them at all. I know everyone's had their own reasons, just like me. Don't judge me, right? For my choice. I don't judge you for yours. Don't judge me for mine. We all think differently. We're human beings. We're unique. That's what we do. And we should respect everybody for their own beliefs, for their own choices, and not try and vilify them or demonize them to say that they're the ones that are causing you to have bad health or causing you to have some reaction or sickness. It's no, we all make our own choices. So we have to live with it. And they love to say, well, yeah, that's your choice. Well, there's consequences. And I'm living them. I don't get to go and participate in a lot of society now. I get it. And the pressure's on. Like, they're dividing our families. They're ruining friendships. They're doing a lot. It's so damaging. So it's not like I'm happy to be on this side. It's sad that there has to be sides. But that's where we're going. And so I want people who have made their choice to know there's no judgment on me. But I am telling you, if in any chance in your life you think there might be truth to Jesus Christ and God and the Bible, then the only message I can give you at this point is you have to turn to Jesus. You have to turn to the cross. That's the only way. It's not going to be science that's going to help you. It's not going to be man that's going to help you. But if you've never believed that, if you don't believe Jesus Christ, if you don't believe God, if you don't believe the Bible, then what does it matter? Then, you know, why would my message even matter? And I shouldn't feel bad telling you that this might be true, and in my heart it is, for your own fate, for your own soul. So it doesn't matter anyway if you don't believe Jesus Christ. So you've already kind of lost out anyway because you don't believe the truth. And that's what I'm saying, having read the Bible and having, come to Jesus. I've had my own spiritual awakening, we'll call it, and I believe that's true, and I'm going to die with that as my truth. And I firmly believe God's going to take care of me, and there is another life after this. But I can't convince someone else, and I'm not going to try. I'm just going to give my testimony, and I'm continue to preach the word. And so that's all there is I can do, and everyone's going to make their choice. And I'm not going to judge anybody or pretend that they're wrong and I know better. I'm just saying this is where I'm at. And if you have any inkling of spirituality in you, then you got to search harder. You got to find out. You got to follow that intuition, that spirit, that gut, and find out what you believe. And that's, I think, more important than anything this world can offer you. So that's it, man. But I could also share some things to maybe help some people that aren't willing to take that first step, because for a lot of people it could be a really onerous task to have to read the Bible or to even have to listen to somebody who's wanting to preach, right? But if you're still with me at this point, I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna read something for you. And I think it's beautiful, because remember the first time I read it, I was like, I can't believe this. So I got my Bible. See, I bring this. This is my patch. This is my patch. That's what I bring. God-given immunity. I got immunity. Don't scare me. Let me in. Yeah, I got a lot of people out there not liking me these days. So be it. I worry about God. So anyway, here's what I got to read to you, okay? So I got somebody walking here. I'll just wait a second. Just hang tight. Hi. Good, thanks. So I'll start that here. Oh, I lost my page. Okay. So this is Isaiah 45, all right? So it says here, "Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have held, to subdue nations before him, and loose the armor of kings, to open before him the double doors, so the gates will not shut, and will go before you, and make the crooked places straight. I will go before you, and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of bronze, and cut the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness, and hidden riches of secret places, that you may know that I, the Lord, who call you by your name, am the God of Israel, and the God am I for Jacob and my servant's sake, and Israel my elect. I have even called you by your name. I have named you, though you have not known me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. There is no God besides me. I will gird you, though you have not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun to its setting, that there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create calamity. I, the Lord, do all these things." And it just gets better. But that's Isaiah 45, okay? And I didn't read it perfectly. It's beautiful. You should get a Bible and read it yourself. But in the chapter previous and that one, Cyrus is named. So Isaiah is a prophet. And he's from like 795 BC or like 750 BC. He's from way before Jesus' time. And he's one of the best prophets ever, I think. He ends up prophesying all about Jesus. The whole book of Isaiah is about Jesus. But in that chapter there, it specifically talks about Cyrus. And so Cyrus is the king to come. So Isaiah's even before the Jews get taken captive by Babylon. So it's even before King Nebuchadnezzar. But King Nebuchadnezzar does get prophesied by Isaiah, and that does happen. But after their captivity and their time in exile in Babylon, it's the Persian king, King Cyrus. So King Cyrus, God is telling Isaiah, and Isaiah is telling the people, God already has Cyrus in the wings to set the people free from the king of Babylon. This is like 200 years before Cyrus's time. Cyrus is born in like 535 BC. So it's like 200 years before, or even more. It's so much before his time. He's already been named by Isaiah, by God. Through God, he's already said he'll have Cyrus. And he says, even though you have not known me, because Cyrus is actually a Persian, right? He's the Persian Mede. So he doesn't believe in the God of Israel, the God of Jacob. But he's anointed by God to be the one who will set God's people free, to set them free from the king of Babylon. And Babylon was like the greatest kingdom ever. And they had these huge gates, the gates of Ishtar, the ones with the lions on it. He's the lion in the prophecy, the revelation of Daniel. But anyway, it's like this impenetrable fortress of a kingdom. And it just so happens that the night that they end up being defeated, it's when King Nebuchadnezzar's son, who's a prince, who's also like second in command, this is Belshazzar, he's having a party with all of his people. And it's like a week-long party like they do. And he's like drinking from the cups, the gold cups and everything that were taken from the temple of Jerusalem. And they're all praising the gods of gold and the gods of silver and all their gods. And then all of a sudden this hand out of nowhere, he sees it. And it starts writing on the wall. And it's like, Mene, Tekel, Harem. And no one knows what that means. But he saw this hand by itself writing on the wall. And so he's freaked. He's like shaking in his boots. And his queen comes to him and is like, don't be afraid. We've got a guy in our kingdom who can interpret all dreams and knows everything. He's a prophet. So they bring Daniel. And Daniel ends up saying, through God, I'll find out. And it's like, you've been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Your kingdom will be taken from you. It's basically what this message is from God. And that night, King Cyrus gets through the gates of Babylon. And the story in history is the gates, there's like 3 gates, like it's huge. They're iron and everything. And they have a river that runs through it. And so it ends up being that they somehow like dam the river so it's lower. And then the people that were supposed to be in charge of like closing the gates that night didn't do their job. And so the Medes and Persians all got through. And they ended up that night killing King Belshazzar and like taking over the kingdom, King Cyrus. And then he ended up being the best king you could ever imagine. He was like anointed by God, but he was also one that, even though he conquered so much, like the Persian Empire is probably one of the biggest. I mean, Rome's up there, obviously, and obviously Babylon, but the Persian was amazing in its own time, right? The other one being the Greek, Alexander. And so
he ends up being a king that says, if you believe a different God or you have different culture or whatever your religion, we'll let you still continue with that. We'll give you your rights, even though you're going to be under us. We're the ones that have dominion over you. I'm the king. This is my kingdom. But I'll still let these people from all these different countries and places do what they do. I won't force them to change or worship our gods or do what we do. So he was just like, there's a Cyrus cylinder, and it's like the first of like human rights, basically. And the cylinder of Cyrus was from like ancient times, showed how he was this beautiful king who actually cared about people and let people have like their own freedom, their own beliefs, their own rights. Even though they were like slaves to the kingdom, basically, he didn't treat them that way. So what lessons to learn from King Cyrus? But that's prophesied in Isaiah. And that's 200 years before his time. So it should blow your mind. Like, even historians, they can't deny that. This is true. This happened. So it's something that I think even the most skeptic or like hardened heart has to acknowledge, that obviously God's real, or there's something about his prophets. I mean, Isaiah ended up getting cut in half. He got sawed in half. So there's never a good end on earth for his prophets. They always end up getting persecuted and killed. They're martyred, basically. But it's the word that they leave behind that's so powerful, and that shows us God's character and God's truth. So God brought a boy who, in his own time, he was born of this other king. It's like Sennacherib, his name was. He's from Persia. It was his sister's child, was Cyrus. And this king had a dream that his sister's womb had like water flowing out of it, and it like flooded his kingdom. And he didn't know what it was, so they sent her away. She was pregnant. And then he had another dream where it was like vines, or like this like tree, I guess, grew out of her womb and like crowded out his kingdom. So he thought that was a sign that something from her baby was going to threaten his kingdom, which was so true. And so he went to have the child killed. So when the child was born, he sent his guys to kill the child. But the ones that he sent couldn't do it. God was on their side. And so they ended up giving this child, Cyrus, to these commoners, or these people, and said, bring this child into the wilderness and like let him die in the elements, like kill him. And these people didn't do it either, because God was with Cyrus. So Cyrus ended up avoiding death from the time he was a baby. And he grew up, and it wasn't until he was like 12 that they found out he was actually this heir, this one from the king's sister. And he ends up becoming the king. And one of the greatest kings ever, King Cyrus. So it's just such a beautiful thing. I just think you can't beat God's word. You can't beat the story, and the history of it is so truthful and beautiful. And it doesn't matter how many people who are unbelieving and ungodly and don't care about the Bible, they can't deny these things. And if you read it, you'll know it's just so powerful. So I hope you take that to heart, and maybe, if anything, spend the time to read a book or two from the Bible. Like, the one you should be reading now is Revelation of Jesus Christ. And we'll talk about that more another day. And also the book of Daniel, which ties right into that. We might be at that time, guys. So there's some things to know. And if you would all care about your fate, your soul's fate, if you believe you have a spirit, you have a human spirit, which is, unbreakable, unbeatable, so powerful, all powerful. We're God's creation. If you believe that, and you firmly believe that, and you have God with you, then nothing that they can do to you on this earth can stop you or hurt you. I mean, death doesn't hurt you. Death doesn't scare you. You know where your destiny is. And so hopefully there's a few of you out there that I know still have great hearts, and maybe just in their own way are still caught up in the world. And geez, man, like, isn't it getting exhausting having to go along with all this stuff? Aren't you starting to feel it on yourself? That it's like hurting your families, that's possibly going to have like long-term effects on your children, or that there's going to be less and less freedom for you in the future if you just continue to believe and go along with this science? I mean, at some point, I'm hoping some people are going to say, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong here. This isn't right. And I don't know if that ever does happen. And maybe there's some out there that think this is the greatest time ever.